Oh, right, right.
Maybe we can help me with. Oh, sorry.
I first woke up at 4:50.
No.
Hmm?
I think maybe it was the internet, I'm thinking.
It worked after it went off and on last night again?
No, I think that's why I asked you to reset it in the hope that if it was that, it would
It was, yeah.
recover. So maybe it was the internet and nothing to do with
Well,
live
Andrew
stream.
never responded, so I think they may have been flooded by stuff that
Yeah, it could
maybe
have been something
was off.
server.
Yeah.
This,
But that video didn't catch yesterday either.
even the one that was just loaded.
The local one.
The Swami Satyavratananda is coming apparently she's traveling to Oregon. I didn't know that. So after this class, you please call, she's at the ashram in Sailorsburg.
Okay.
So call someone there, Shuddhatma or someone, Vimala, yeah, extension 210,
Okay.
and get her local phone number or room number or something and give it to me.
Okay. She's in Oregon now? Vimala's not in Oregon. This one. Okay.
She's in the ashram.
Oh, she's in the ashram. Okay, I didn't understand so much. I was like, oh.
She's in ashram.
So I don't need
I
much of
learned
this
today,
ashram.
yeah, I learned today that she may be traveling here, I don't know where. So if she's anywhere nearby, it would be nice for her to come here.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So she comes every year, but this is the first time she's traveling to Oregon. Happening place, Eugene. Yeah, she's, if she comes here, we should put her in touch with Shanti Shivani, must definitely meet her,
Okay.
because she has done a lot with something about sound and Vedas and sound and all these things. Yeah, good. Okay. What are we doing? Ah, okay. Bhashya.
Just like last night.
No, no, don't say that because I'll start somewhere else then.
Oh, okay, that's true.
I went to Atlanta and there we had some selections of this very Upanishad which we are studying from the beginning. So I had somewhere in the middle. When I came back and I, just before I came to class, I started to look and I said, oh, this is where we are. It took a second. So don't say last night. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namo Bhagavate
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vaivasvataya
Vaivasvataya
Mrityave
Mrityave
Brahma Vidyacharyaya
Brahma Vidyacharyaya
Nachiketase cha.
Nachiketase cha.
Yeah. So yesterday we talked about a couple of things that needed to be in place for moksha, for understanding that I am the compassion that I seek. What were they?
Accommodativeness is necessary. Compassion.
That is what we are discovering. So in order to have that compassion in place, I discussed two things at length yesterday. What were they?
Should be coming from Dharma.
Self-acceptance, Dharma.
Hmm?
Dharma.
Dharma.
Self-acceptance.
Yeah, dharma. And then, what was the second thing?
To understand the seeker and the sought.
So dharma. One is this dharma. Dharma means that I put ahead of all other pursuits a certain structure which will help me to pursue all my other desires. That is dharma. That structure based on non-injury. That's really the ultimate dharma. Not hurting others in the process of gaining what I want to gain. Otherwise you just ride roughshod over other people, And so this is not dharma. So the dharma becomes a pursuit on its own, because without mastering that, in fact, as Mrs. Yama says, will say to Yama, will say to her husband a little later on in this very Upanishad, that all hopes are dashed to achieve anything right here, right now, are dashed without dharma, because I have basically scrambled up all my ambitions and in fact cut the very limb upon which I am sitting without dharma. And also what other things are dashed? Any hopes for Vedanta are also dashed. This she didn't say, I am saying that. And because this dharma, the ability to do the right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right manner, and being not always at cudgels with the universe, letting one disarm, gives a framework, an infrastructure. Whether I want to pursue the finite or the infinite, doesn't matter. The infrastructure is the same. And it becomes even more costly to not have dharma at the level of the infinite. Because, as I said, that split is there between the knower and the doer. Between the guilty one and the non-guilty one. Yeah, so this is what this split becomes very costly in the pursuit of Vedanta because Vedanta will not bless. This mother will not bless. The embrace of the mother, she may still embrace because she is compassionate. But the embrace has to bless into that oneness. It will not happen. And the other thing that Dharma does for Vedanta is that if you prioritize rightness and being in the flow of the cosmic will, meaning your own free will, subserves the cosmic will. How do I know the cosmic will? Just sit up and listen. Spend the time to listen to the cosmic will. It becomes very clear. I mean, look outside right now, it's raining. I mean, it's not some kind of rocket science to know that it's raining, correct? It's raining and a little bit on the chilly side. And then what? That itself gives me a lot of clues about how to lead the day. It's a good day to eat chili peppers, which will digest. And then what? It is a bad day to eat cold things. You know, even at the level of the body, we are not talking anything big. If I go out, I have to carry an umbrella. I mean, this is common sense. I'm not going to say, why are you raining? I'm going to defy you. I'm going to will you to become sunny. It's a waste of time. You know, this is what is just on the very, very mundane, basic level going with the flow. Meaning, wherever there is an obstruction, you know, I turn within. That's what it is. I use this as any obstruction that I hit. What do you do? If you are driving and you hit a dead end, what do? You make a U-turn. That's all. That's all. You make a U-turn. Vedanta, I make an I-turn. I turn to myself. Instead of always blaming someone else, you are the cause of my problems. I make an I-turn. I turn into myself. And that's why in the regions where you see that the river is turning back to its source, it becomes a pilgrimage area. Because the river is reminding us what we need to do. So whenever any obstruction is faced, we have to be like the river. First it stops, and then it flows on, but in keeping with the other forces. That's the thing. So all this defiance, all these things, these are all what are called authority problems. And do you see how they all hinge on dharma? If one can commit to dharma, all the other adhikaritvam, or what we call the qualifications, come automatically. Because what this cosmic being in tandem with a cosmic flow, what it does is that the nonsensical desires that arise in the mind, which become building blocks for samsara, you know, get dismantled when my dedication is to dharma. So dharma means I have to be in the right, I have to do the right things, right behavior, right conduct, right attitude. When?
All the time.
All the time, starting now. And so therefore, you know, you cannot, it's not something that can be postponed, and it's not for 5 minutes after class because I heard about it for 1 hour. It's a lifestyle, correct? And this lifestyle is what reduces raga dveshas. Because raga and dvesha, raga means strong preference, dvesha means strong abhorrence. So these likes and dislikes do not have a place in anything. In my attitude or in my action. And so what happens is that the raga dveshas, the desires get worn out. Literally and figuratively. They get tired of fighting. They go to sleep, which is what we want. This is a very good thing. And so, dharma is highlighted here. Along with viveka, which is what I said about knowing the source of the problem The problem is that I feel incomplete. Not that I am incomplete. I feel incomplete. I feel a sense of self-loathe. I feel a sense of judgment. I feel sorrow, anger, fear, etc., etc. And when do I feel them? Only when I am awake. In sleep, it's not there. Accidentally, when I am happy, daydreaming. That's why I said only when I am awake. It's not there. So only most of the time in the waking state is where I am assailed by this duality. So the resolution of this duality is not to cut up everything in the universe and make it into one single mass. That's not the point. Is to transcend this duality cognitively by understanding that this duality is an as though what? Superimposition on that self which is free of whatever is superimposed on it. So this is what I have to understand. It takes a lot of, thing. So this is the second thing we discussed, that the seeker sought, we have to see that the sadhana deployed here, sadhana means the means, and the goal are one and the same. What is the means? I, a compassionate I. The goal is I, means is I, there is no difference. And so therefore, the pursuit drops from action to cognition, actually a recognition of the I that I want to be. Otherwise, it's running around in circles trying to do things. And by doing, what do you get? A big headache. That's all you get. Yeah. Keep doing. Fir kya? Big headache. The doing is fraught with all kinds of stress, and then the doing begets what is called karma phala. What is karma phala? Yeah, results or fruits of the action. And then the action, the fruits of the action, do you like? No. Why? Because it didn't turn out quite right. It's like cooking something. Oh, too much salt I put. Quickly cut one potato and drop it in. Oh, now it's too bland. And then you just want to shake a little chili powder. The hand has other ideas. The whole bottle along with the lid falls inside. Then you head for the pantry to cut up some more potatoes. Then by that time that has to be completely chucked because it is irretrievable. Then you start again. And then what? You realize that what you want to make has all been utilized in the other one, which was thrown away. Then you have to go to the market to get the other ingredients. Then you get all the other ingredients. Then of course invariably you forget something. If you don't forget the ingredients, you forget your wallet there. Then you have to rush back. So you see, the doing is always leading to other undoing. And Indian cooking is a good example. You put the salt, and then salt is still little. You put some more souring agent. And then what happens is that kind of reduces the salt further. Then you put a little more salt. Oh, too much salt. Then you put a little more souring agent. So you keep on going like this, back and forth, and you can never get anything perfect. Why? The manifest Jagat, is viewed through defective eyes of imperfection. And the defective eyes are ignorant eyes. Yes. That have defected from the vision. That's why they are defective. Ajnana timirandhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurun militayena tasmai shri gurave namaha. This is what it is. So this defective vision, meaning the eyes that have defected from the vision, that's what it is. Because they don't know. They have taken themselves to be what I am not, and they are projecting a view of oneself, of the Jagat, of Ishvara, as something, a flawed universe. Everybody is convinced they live in a flawed universe. Yeah, full of problems, full of defects, full of horrible things. And oh, to lead one day. That's why people write these blogs. In fact, they should be called blobs. It's just blobs of complaints all the time. You look at these blobs, you know. Somebody, how do I know about this blog? Somebody asked me to bless their blog. So I was constrained to read this. I said, what is this thing called blog? Let me read. A few entries I read, it was more than enough. Yeah. They shouldn't be called entries. Entrails, because you just everything comes out. Everything comes out, and this is such a public space. Why? Because this whole angst that one lives in this place of imperfection, and whether that place is the Jagat or whether that place is the placeholder of the heart or my own way of looking at things, that has to be interrogated here. So really speaking, we come to a very drastic but provisional conclusion before studying the Upanishad, is that the Jagat, the manifest universe, is perfect. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam. The cause is perfect. Purna means perfect, complete, full. And then Purnam Idam, the effect, the so-called effect of that causeless cause is perfect. No, then what? You have to correct that. What do you have to correct? If you try to correct this manifest universe, which is, which is in itself, like samsara has a certain infinite quality to it, meaning it keeps reproducing itself. So if you try to correct the manifest universe, what will happen? You will get tired, that's all. You will get tired, upset, bored. And so therefore what? The only thing to correct is my vision. If you cannot see properly, if you're holding the book like this, and then you need another pair of arms to hold it further, what do you have to do? You have to go to the, 1 hour glasses fellow. Yeah, all these things they advertise. You go get your eyes checked up before lunch. Then after lunch you come back to pick up the glasses. Oh, I had missed so many things. You put on the new glasses and the whole world looks different. Before, everybody except a big elephant was a big haze, and all you could see was the elephant. Now you can see much more than the elephant. You can see all these things, people, things, colors you missed, forms, names, everything becomes evident to you. And you say, oh, the whole world was grey and now it has become brighter. This is what people say after getting glasses, or better still, an example is cataract surgery. This is what happens. So in other words, if the vision is defective, the literal vision, if my vision is defective, I need to go to the optometrist, I need to go get help. I have to read that board. I still remember it always starts with E, E, F, P, something, all these things you read. And then they say, read the second line from the bottom. And of course, you don't even see the line. You don't even see some jumbled alphabets on the line. You just don't. Is there a second line? Where is the first line? For you, the fourth line is the first line. And so, that all then, they will all note it down. And then they will make you sit down and put, all these various, they make you wear an empty frame and put all these things. And then finally you get your pair of glasses. This is what the whole thing is. So in other words, I need help, right? Yeah. And even if it is cataract surgery, I can't just go to the surgical store, buy some scalpel and some local, anesthetic ointment, and in the morning, cut out the old lens. Can't do that by myself. I need help. Anything to do with the eyes, I mean, I need help. Even to see if something is fallen there, somebody has to look. Or I have to stand in front of a mirror. I can't make the other eye look at this eye. Come on, pluck and look. That cannot happen. I need help. Why? The vision, the way I'm looking at it, the world is defective. It's making me see things that are not there, which is dangerous. Yeah. And this kind of a defective vision, where I see two in place of one, brought on by the addiction to samsara, drink of samsara. Yes. The sorrowful drink I OD on, and I see two in place of one. This is what happens. So therefore I need help. I need help to not wallow in the misery. And I need help to see that the misery is not real. It's just a product of the defensive and the defective vision. And here is where the Guru Stotra, which I chanted, comes in the picture. Ajnana Timira Andha. Andha means blinded by the Timira, means this cataract, the grey cataract that makes everything look grey. Blinded by the cataract of what? Ignorance. Timira here is Ajnanam itself. So andhasya, for such a person, for this jiva, this individual, blinded as it were by ignorance, by the cataract of ignorance, what is the solution? Yeah. You need a scalpel of knowledge, wielded by someone who knows how to wield the scalpel. Yeah. You cannot give a scalpel to, carpenter. Carpenter also does things with tools. And you tell this carpenter to shave off something, and you can use it on the eyes, the same instrument that is used to shave the wood off in wood carving. Wood carving and eyeball carving are two different things. So you need a proper surgeon. You cannot give the scalpel to plumber, carpenter and all these people. They are skilled, or electrician. They are skilled in what they do for that particular medium. Here you need someone who is used to removing the cataract for a living, correct? Who is an expert. So you have to go to an ophthalmologist, and only that person will know how to do this incision and remove it. This is what it is. So if this is true, if on the level of the vyavahara, on the level of the transactional empirical reality, something gets wrong with the vision, I have to go to the eye surgeon for removal of the cataract. But if the metaphoric vision, the way of looking at the world is flawed, who do I call? Who do I go to? Yeah. Gukaraha, andhakaraha. Gu, the syllable gu, stands for ignorance. It's interesting. The word gu in ancient China, Chinese language, means possession. When you are possessed by some other entity, in the olden days they used to have that. In fact, there is no possession. Basically, you are possessed by samsara, really. And you start thinking it's real. So when you are possessed by something, when it overtakes you, that kind of a sickness is called gu. Here too it's the same thing. For us, gu is agrahanam, not, that general ignorance which overpowers, and therefore I don't know the truth of myself. But it looks like in the Chinese language, gu means anyatha grahanam, which is basically seeing what is not. Very interesting that the two, languages give the whole meaning of this whole problem here. So gu is the problem, ru is the remover. The syllable ru means to remove. So therefore, the guru, the teacher, here becomes the mirror. The mirror that removes the defective vision that I have by showing me exactly what I look like. Yeah. The mirror is the Upanishad wielded by the teacher. That's what it is. Or you can say the mirror is the teacher, because there is no difference between the teacher and the teaching. Because Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati, the knower of this Brahman, this wholeness, this all completeness, fullness, limitlessness, is the knower is that person. Because anything you know, you don't turn into what you know. You know, you're researching scorpions, you don't become one. You know, and you start walking sideways like these crustaceans do, crabs and scorpions. They don't have a direct approach. They see the leg over there, your leg, and they are headed towards that with their, what are the claws?
Pincers?
Yeah, pincers. And they're headed. But they don't want you to know that they're coming directly at it, because you will walk away. So this is a very nice dance they do. So they go to the left. And you think they are going to the left, you go to the right, then suddenly they have come here. Then they, may fool you by saying they have no interest in that leg. And then when you are not looking, they charge from the back. This is the whole thing. Correct? And the Vedanta is something like this, because what it has to do, it has to knock off the ahankara that says, I know everything. And so it deploys the same tactic of samsara and all your desires. The desires also, they don't come calling, they don't come with a calling card, I'm here, please seek an appointment with me, nothing like that. They come without being called. They sneak into the subconscious and then they come alive into the conscious mind, and they don't let you rest until they have been fulfilled. Correct? And the Guru and the Upanishads together, they deploy the same methodology used by samsara, and they sneak into the heart when the knower is not looking and dismantle the knower of the finite. And what is replaced, what is there is what is replaced. All there is beingness, knowingness that is without time, without space, a beingness that is without limits. The consciousness is all that is there. The conscious individual who is finite, who thinks himself, herself to be finite, and who is conscious of discrete objects, there is always that duality between subject and object. Here the status of being the subject is knocked off. That which can never be objectified, I have to see how to see that. I need a mirror. I need a teacher. This is something which is a logical thing. And here is where sometimes the difficulty is, because gurus abound in the universe, and if there is one thing there is no scarcity of, it is guru. Yes, everything else there is scarcity. But gurus are mushrooming by day, some by night also, and there is no dearth of gurus. And everyone calls themselves guru. There is cooking guru, there is cleaning guru, because there are all these websites. People, just like they say, please look at my blog, please look at my website. What do you do? Well, I clean up other people's acts for a living. Oh, that sounds interesting. How? Well, I go to their house, and if there is anything needing to be organized and cleaned up, $300 per closet, and and if it's kitchen, it's more. I just clean up and organize their life. This is a business, and obviously they are thriving because people don't know how to clean up after themselves. This is a big business. So this is cleaning guru. Then of course if you want to learn how to cook, you need cooking guru. You need gardening guru, definitely, because you don't know what grows, and you were born with brown thumbs, not green thumbs. Anything that you touch turns yellow or brown. So you need a green thumb guru, you need a gardening guru, and then what other guru? Music guru, definitely you need. Otherwise your key will be off the charts. And then you need a dance guru, and in fact in Bharatanatyam they insist, all the teachers insist, you have to call me guru. Yeah, they insist that, and they will write their name, guru so and so. And but according to the Upanishad, those are not gurus. Yeah, they are gurus of the finite. Gurus that in time and place teach what is called aparavidya, the knowledge of means and ends, the knowledge within the regular means and ends. And in fact, the definition of guru is ignorance, ru is remover. So that is only the one who is a guru, the remover of ignorance. In other words, the definition of guru is Mahavakya Upadesha Karta Guruhu. Yeah. And Guruhu, who is Guru? Mahavakya Upadesha Karta. Upa plus dish, Upadesha, the one who teaches until it is understood. What? Mahavakya, the one who unfolds the sentences of the Upanishad that demonstrate the oneness between Jiva and Ishvara. Ishvara, the cause of the universe; Jiva, this hapless, hopeless, helpless, disconnected, alienated individual who says, very, very sorry, I am samsari. This is the one. So, the one who shows that non-separateness is the Guru. And then the other thing is this, that the chota gurus, dance guru, music guru, etc., martial arts guru, those are another people who call themselves gurus. And Pujya Swamiji tells a story that he went to learn some martial arts when he was young from somebody who was working in one of the gardens. They had all this land and everything. And so there was one person who was working in the coconut grove and who was very much interested in, who was an expert in this. So when Swamiji was a young boy, he remembers going to this man and saying, "Will you please teach me?" And that man got outraged. This is the way to approach a guru? Go bring coconut, go bring flowers, do pranam, then I'll see if I want to teach. This is what it is. Bring dakshina, bring this, bring that. And so there is obviously, in the tradition, it has percolated to everything, that there is a reverence, there is a kind of an abiding certain protocol when approaching the teacher. When approaching the teacher of Brahma Vidya, that's where this whole thing has come from. So, the main problem here is that generally people don't have trouble asking for help. They don't have trouble going to a martial arts guru if they want to buttress their knowledge of self-defense. No one has trouble going to cooking guru. Cooking classes remain very popular because everybody likes to eat. Nobody likes to cook. Everybody likes to eat. That's why cooking classes are popular. Dance, music, of course, they are the kama, aesthetic pleasures. So dance guru, music gurus will all have a, abiding presence in the jagat. They will never be out of a job, So the individuals do not have a problem entering into a relationship of the not knowing person in regard to these branches of knowledge. Whether it is math guru, reading guru, writing guru, arithmetic guru, cooking guru, violin guru, martial arts guru. The jiva, the individual, does not have a problem broadcasting their ignorance and saying, help me, I don't know how to cook. You have to start from scratch. You have to show me rice and tell me what it's called. It's that bad, Yeah, some people don't even know how to boil water. Really, that also they have to be taught. How to turn on the stove. That's where the whole thing begins. So they don't have a problem saying, I'm ignorant, please help me. I don't know how to cook, I don't know how to clean. And then, how did I forget this from the list? Then when nothing works, there is life guru called life coach. How could I forget this? Yes, I have to backtrack. Life coach. This is all I learned through my travels. And life coach is the one you turn to when you're not having a good life. And how did the life coach become a life coach? Without any coaching. Because this is a new terminology, and in most states of the United States of America, there is no certification for this. Yeah, you don't need to be certified even to teach some yoga, you need certificate. That has to be displayed. And then you need to display all these things that if you get hurt on my floor, you cannot sue me. All these things you have to take care. If you're having a studio, it's not easy to be a yoga teacher. You have to have so many hours of under the belt, and you have to have so many hours of teaching. Yeah. And if you're teaching massage, you have to be more qualified than someone who is just giving massage. For everything, even if, of course, if you're a psychologist, you have had to have undergone 1,500 hours of therapy yourself, so that you don't project all your stuff onto your patients. But life coach, kuch nahi. Yes, nothing. You don't need anything to hang a shingle, You just to say life coach, so and so, LC, life coach. It sounds good. Oh, LC, what is LC? Life coach. So you have a few intensive sessions. Of course, they're all very costly, because the person is taking responsibility for your life. Yeah. Supposed to be an empowering experience. I don't know about it. And then what happens? Then you have some intense session, and then you discuss all your failings. You say, I can't organize for the life of me. Oh, life coach, life guru. And then what? I'm very bad in social skills. Something happens, there's a lock on my mouth in social situations. I can't mingle freely and talk nicely. And have all these dreams and desires, and they are in a bin locked up in the attic because I don't know how to access them. Attic means here. And top story. There all my dreams are locked up, and they are in fact blocked up by my own underconfidence. There is so much I have to offer, oh life guru, and there is so much I have to give to the universe. Who says that? The person is convinced, all these books and novels, these novels starting with novel ideas are just waiting to get through the imprisoned mind. The shackled mind is blocking me. At this point, we don't know who is talking, whether it's the life guru saying this or the apprentice to the life guru saying this, we don't know. Doesn't matter. This is their conversation. Please help. you know. Anyam upayam na jane. I don't know any other remedy. Please help. Aha, yeah, this is more serious than I thought. Means what? It's going to cost more. Yes. But I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to invest in you. You know, actually you are investing in me, but I'm trying to make you feel better about it. So I need $5,000 upfront. And then afterwards, because I'm going to be available as need basis after a few intensive sessions, then, you know, I'll charge you by the minute. So saying, of course, the person goes away. And before reaching the home has a crisis. Road rage takes over on the way and tells off the other car. The other car is not wanting to be outwitted, you know. Also they enter into an altercation, you know. The cars also enter into an altercation and have some dings to show. And then the person calls the life coach. Okay, steady, calm. Do you have a paper bag next to you as I told? Yes, somewhere it is in the car. Search for it. I will hold. Tick, tick, tick. Money is ringing up. Your own money, you know. Yes, I found the paper bag, but it is stuck together. This is karma. And pry it open. Don't tear it. You need it. Pry it open. I don't know. My hands are shaking. I'm here for you. Put me on speakerphone. Pry it open. Use both the hands. Okay, I did it. What to do now? Apply it to the nose and mouth and try to breathe. Oh, I feel a lot better. Thank you. All right. Now that has been 15 minutes. Now I don't want to take over your life. You have to lead your life now that it is calm. You do that. Now I'm going to hang up, but I'm always a phone call away, okay? This is the life guru. All this I have heard. These are all real stories. I'm not making this up. This is what people come and tell me. Because when the life guru runs out, they have to come to the Swami. Even the life guru has come to the Swami, because one time I asked, what do you do? I'm a life coach. I said, oh, why are you here? Because nothing is working in my life. All my clients have run away. I don't know what to do. This is what the whole thing is. So, even to the life guru, this fellow doesn't have any problem saying, I need you, I need my help, don't leave me. Don't abandon me, everybody else has. I need your help. Please help. And I don't know how to lead my life. Please help. But when it comes to seeking spiritual knowledge, yeah, I get guru rash. Thinking of guru, seeing guru, the idea of guru makes me break out into hives. This is called guru allergy, guru allergy. This is what it is. Why? That is the question. Why? You don't have any problem going and telling the cooking guru, I don't know how to put a pan on the stove. Please teach me how to open a can, how to use a pan. You don't have any problem. You don't have any problem telling the maths guru what is 2 plus 2, I don't know. You don't have any problem telling the life guru, I have no social skills. But why is there a trouble seeking and admitting one's ignorance to the guru that is, above par of all these gurus? Because this guru makes you stop seeking any other gurus, any other thing, It's the final say over your life. It's the final say that I am not the seeker. In fact, I am the sought. That which kills all the seeking. Why is there so much trouble approaching? First of all, that I need help is itself takes so many lifetimes to appreciate. I don't know why, but it does. Because this whole samsara propagates itself by by disseminating the myth of self-help. It's all about self-help. I help myself. DIY. Sorry, but Vedanta is not DIY. What is DIY? Do it
Yourself.
yourself. There is no do it yourself Vedanta. You'll never find a book. Neither will you find a book Vedanta for dummies. Why? Vedanta is not for dummies. That's why. Dummy means sadhana sadhya sambandha, doesn't know. Doesn't know what they are seeking. Yeah. It's not some kind of a statement on the intelligence. It's a statement on viveka or the lack thereof. You can be highly intelligent, but from the standpoint of Vedanta, not know what you're seeking. That is the dummy according to Vedanta. There seems to be some allergy to put my life in the hands of a figure of authority, the same authority which has hurt me in other avatars, in the avatar of mother, father, in the avatar of other elders, whatever it may be. This is where all my hurts lie. And this is where I have the greatest difficulty in surrendering. Because there is always a problem, because there is a catch-22. You go to catch a guru, but you end up in a catch-22 instead. You catch the 22. What is the catch-22? How are you going to choose a guru? There is no primer. How to choose a guru? 10 easy steps. How are you going to choose a guru? Yeah, but then, one is neither Shrotriya nor Brahmanistha. So, when one is ignorant, how are you going to choose a guru? Guru should be the one who knows, correct? That is the, basic qualification. Any other guru, like dance guru, you can see where all they have danced. And music guru, you can see where all they have, sung or played their instrument. And how you can, you can look at all the things they have achieved. Brahma Vidya Guru is the one without a resume. Yeah. What will the Brahma Vidya Guru put in the resume?
Name of own guru.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. Then it does no longer becomes the Guru's resume. It's the Guru's resume. So Brahma Vidya Guru will not put anything in the resume. Will just resume to live life without resume. Because there's nothing to advertise. I have self-knowledge. Who cares? That's what people will say. You try telling people, I have self-knowledge, I'm pursuing self-knowledge. They'll say, who cares? What is that? Is that going to get you a job? No. Is that going to, is that going to make you famous? No. Is that going to make you rich? No. Is that going to make you influential and get a lot of people to gather around you? Probably not. What use of this knowledge? Keep this knowledge to yourself. That's why the knowledge is safe with the gurus. Doesn't come out. Does not come out. So really speaking, there is no resume for the guru of Brahma Vidya, this knowledge that dispels self-ignorance, which makes me, see who I really am, which holds the mirror of Purnatvam, of completeness, of limitlessness. And here I am, a hapless individual, afraid to look into that mirror. But really, Guru is not unlike a mirror. You have to choose a Guru, even though there is a catch-22. You think Guru knows, you hope Guru knows, because you don't know how to judge. Because if you know, then you don't need a Guru. This is the catch-22. If you don't know, how are you going to see whether the Guru knows or not, especially when the Guru doesn't have resume? I have studied, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. How are you going to, you don't have the wherewithal to judge. So you cannot judge. So this is the catch-22. So like a trapeze artist, I have to take a little leap here. To approach the Guru, the trapeze artist uses a pole, like a pole vault. Correct? You know that pole? Pole vaulting. It's a sport. And what you do, in order to make these high jumps, you run with the pole. Very beautiful to see this. And then there is a rope somewhere, too high for humankind, it looks like. But this fellow is such an artist. He runs with this long pole and he will put it in the ground just before that net or that string which is tied, which he has to clear, use the pole to vault over this net or this rope. This is what is called the pole vault. And here, a trapeze artist is a student of Vedanta, and the pole with which to clear this huge leap, this huge net of doubt, fear, uncertainty, is using the stick of Shraddha. Then the Shraddha is, the stick is thrown away. When he clears, the stick doesn't follow because the stick has served its purpose. Here the Shraddha becomes oneself. Shraddha means a leap of faith, a willingness to be wrong, a willingness to give the abode of knowledge in the form of the teacher, the benefit of doubt, the ability to see the teacher as the abode of that knowledge which I want to abide in. This is Shraddha. Shraddha is nothing but trust. Trust in the teacher, trust in the teachings. But what if what? What if I choose the wrong teacher? That happens. It does happen. Like I said, gurus abound. All kinds of gurus. But then what? Oh, I wasted 2 years of Shraddha on the wrong guru. So difficult it is to gather Shraddha. And I wasted it on this wrong guru. But you know what? The guru may be wrong. Shraddha is always true. And that Shraddha has blessed you. Even with the wrong guru, it has blessed you. How? It has blessed you to see that this is wrong. And it has protected you further from that wrongness. And it has blessed you to find the correct one. Some karma it has exhausted. That's what it is. And that's why people have all these doubts, because they think, oh, guru means it's like marriage. You have to just marry one person, and so you have to go have only one guru. And then if there are other gurus, then what to do? Again we have to, again I just always refer to a beautiful story I heard Swamiji, not a story, a beautiful story, where I heard Swamiji address this issue at a satsang. Somebody wrote a note, because the questions were all in the form of notes. He read the note in this large assembly, so it was an anonymous note. Nobody knew who it was. So he read that my previous guru, this is what the questioner said, the petitioner said, my previous guru was such and such. And I studied there in that ashram or with that person for a few years. Suddenly I find myself here at this ashram. And I find myself enjoying myself so much. And I find myself not wanting to go back there. This has frightened me and cast me in shades of doubt. Please help. What can you tell me? And Swamiji's answer was very eloquent and one sentence long. He said, that guru and that ashram has blessed you to be here. Beautiful. When that guru has blessed you means what? Even if that guru, whoever that was, said, no, don't go, still it has blessed, because what has blessed is your own Shraddha that lets you, like the pole vaulter, scale new heights of understanding, of abidance. And so this is Shraddha, and Shraddha means that I dare to look at this mirror. That can only be for my benefit. I dare that it's not going to is not going to distort my features and make me scared of myself. The mirror should not be such that, like a trick mirror, in this Disneyland and all. There are all these concave, convex mirrors that make the face look so big and the body is, like a stick figure. Other times the face is like a small peanut and the body is huge. It's a distorted vision. This is exactly not what the Guru does. And of course the Upanishad itself, herself tells how to choose the Guru. The foolproof way to look for a Guru is the one who has been taught properly by his or her own Guru. That is very important. That is what is important. Because one can have gone to the most illustrious of Gurus and not learnt anything. That's not a possibility. But let's say hypothetically that's a possibility. So we have to see that this teacher who I choose has the ability to show me what they see, has the ability to remove my ignorance, just as their Guru helped them to remove their ignorance. So someone who comes from a sound lineage, who does not distort the vision of the Upanishad, as, for example, as espousing duality when it actually says one. This is one. So I have to see that, because what I want is oneness. Duality doesn't have to be established. It's already there. It has to be de-established. It has to be dethroned, for which I need help. Because I cannot do it myself. This is why. So that is the first qualification of the Guru given by the Mundakopanishad. Shrotriya, the one who comes from a sound lineage of teachers. And the second qualification is Brahmanishtha, the one who is committed to this oneness. The one who does not keep, reproducing the tensions of duality in daily life by having so many competing actions, pet desires, so many things, too many irons in the fire, too many priorities. For whom this oneness is a priority. That is Brahmanishtha. Sole priority, primary priority. And so, therefore, these are the two guidelines that are given. But the second one, Brahmanishtatvam, how can you see whether they are, you cannot see in their mind how many thoughts they have. Okay, I have 10 thoughts. Okay, 9 thoughts are Brahman. Okay, good. Brahman is not an object of thought. How are you going to ascertain this? So therefore, better go with Shrotriyatvam. Someone who has been well taught. Even if they don't know fully, or even if they are yet to abide in the teaching. A Shrotriya may say, the Upanishad says everything is Ananda. Shrotriya struck by sorrow. Still they will not mislead. They may not have completely owned up the knowledge and says, you are Ananda, I am Ananda, there is nothing but Ananda. And how can you talk about Ananda with a, with a face, how they show the mouth like this. How can you talk about joy by saying everything? Upanishad says everything is one. It's all one. Reaching out for the tissues. And this is what the whole thing is. So the teacher may have a third person relationship, the Shrotriya, with the Upanishad, meaning that person says this and I am just a little mouthpiece, still that person is safe. Much safer than the charismatic hoo-ha of this person who has not studied. Who says, I have gained, in a big stroke, I gained the knowledge. It must have been a mini stroke, really. That kind of knowledge altered some firing off in the brain, and then suddenly the person looked at the whole world differently and then thought it their dear duty to teach each and every person, whether they were willing or unwilling. Yeah, sometimes people do this. I suddenly gained this knowledge. How? God is great. Why did He choose your head? Because I have a big head and it was easy for God to choose me. And I'm the chosen one. And then you are what? The frozen one. And then I'm going to thaw you out with everything that I have. Where did you learn this from? It's a secret. Nobody knows. I didn't learn at all. In fact, I'm a teacher without being a student. And people think that that's a good thing. And they say sometimes to me that my teacher never needed to sit at the feet of anyone. So exalted they are. My teacher never surrendered. Even Bhagavan surrenders to my teacher. This is what sometimes people do, and I don't know if it is those teachers or the students that have this aura around this whole setup. And in fact, one group says that we should not have photos of gods. No Lakshmi, no Ganesha, no Saraswati. Why? Because the teacher is everything. All right, I don't have a problem with that. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha. Yes, the teacher is everything. But why can't you see that in Lakshmi and Ganesha also you can see the same? Lakshmi and Ganesha are also the same. This is a one-sided, problem. And if the so-called teacher got the knowledge of this particular knowledge, I don't care about other knowledges, this particular knowledge, if the so-called teacher has got without undergoing a rigorous process of learning himself or herself, you please bless that teacher and say, please enjoy the knowledge, keep it to yourself. Don't give it to me. Yeah. This is not the tradition. Nobody cares about sampradaya krits in our tradition. We have enough sampradayas and each one is thousands of years old. We don't care about some, what is that? New, one more sprout. We don't care about that. You go to Kumbh Mela, which is orange festival at the banks of the river. And they will not, and you want to reserve a tent. This is a sadhu sabha where all the sadhus go for 10 days, 21 days they go. A whole city springs up. The UN is studying this because it's such a wonderful city that springs up. Water, food, everything comes up. And then it's all just dissolved after the event. So you go to this mela, this fair, and you try to reserve a booth. They are not interested in your name. They will say, Aapka Guru Sthan kidhar hai? What is your lineage? You have to give the name of your Guru, their Guru, their Guru. You have to give the name of the lineage. Then they will decide. They are not interested in your name. This is our tradition. And so we have a little bit of a guideline. They're not all at sea. So I have a little bit of a guideline who to study from and who to run away from. This is good. Some basic guidelines have been chalked out and have been told. Still the fear doesn't subside. Fear is very much there. And then when one tries to jump without the pole of Shraddha, one always falls short, correct? Falls on the face. And then they say, oh, the teaching doesn't work. Nothing wrong with the teaching. Teaching works. Shraddha is not there. Something is not there. I have to help myself to get to the place of daring to be able to look in the mirror. So these guidelines help me choose the mirror. Like when you go to the shop, to buy a mirror, what is the first thing that you do? Huh?
Look at.
You have to look at yourself. You have to make sure that you are seen as two-dimensional. Yeah. It shows you off very well. In fact, it shows you in a better light than what you actually think you look like. Then you say, this is a very good mirror. You purchase the mirror, you buy the mirror, and then you hang it in your bedroom. Next day you look at it. Are you looking at the mirror? Or are you looking at yourself? What? You're looking at yourself. Yesterday also you looked at yourself, but you looked at yourself with the intention of checking up the mirror. You were not really looking at yourself. You were checking up the mirror against your vision of yourself. Yeah, this is called checking up the Guru. Yeah. Then you buy into the Guru. You don't buy the Guru. Then what? Then after that, what are you doing? You are using the Guru. You know, Guru is hung in the classroom. The Guru is hung in the classroom, and then you come and sit before the Guru to lose the hang-ups of yourself. Correct? That is what it is. So the next day, you are not checking up the Guru. The next day, you are not somewhere. That checkup has to stop. Otherwise, you need a checkup. Yeah. More we'll see. Take a short 15-20 minute break. We'll come back and see. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.